Hello, my name is Luis Montoya. I'm gonna refute the claim by Matthew Ray that the United States roads, highways, and bridges are lacking in satisfying the needs of our progressive society. His secondary claims are that highways are in terrible shape, bridges are barely able to support the load that they were designed to withstand, and basically that's it. He only quotes one source for his entire argument. He only quotes the American Society of Civil Engineers. I'm going to say it's a little bit biased because the main goal of this organization is to promote business for civil engineers. Civil engineers being the number one guys in charge of building the roads and bridges. It's kind of sketchy. My main claim is that our progressive society is moving away from its reliance on transit infrastructure, that we should channel our taxpayers' money into other sources, into other more urgent matters. One of my claims is that people are working from home more often with the advancement in technology. People being able to communicate through their phones, like FaceTiming or Skype. It's more accessible and it's easier for people to work from anywhere or work from home. You don't need to get on your car and go on the freeway or the highway or whatever. You can just stay from home. I'm gonna use the source of the US Census that states that there's been an increase of 4.2 million people that are working from home now. That's a 60% increase from like 2000. There's also another article by Forbes in 2013 that states that 1 in 5 Americans work from home now, and these numbers are going to increase by 63% in 5 years, if not less. My second point is that there are other greater factors that influence or that cause, like the bad experiences that we feel or experience on the highways or roads. Because my opponent, he usually uses personal experiences. He tells us about a time or the experience he feels when he is driving to school from his house, and he tells us like how much time he wastes on just going on the freeway because there's usually a lot of repairs or there's not enough lanes. But he uses the evidence that the highway congestion and lack of public transit accounts for an estimated of 101 billion in wasted time and fuel annually. I'm gonna bring another evidence that says that accidents cause more economic damage to society than the actual bridges and highways. With $277 billion wasted every year just on accidents, we can see that accidents have a greater influence on people's experience on the highway than the actual highway. What else? He says that they're not working fast enough to fix these issues, and they're not spending enough money to fix them. I would argue the contrary. Every year, at least in 2014, according to the Congressional Budget Office for the U.S. Congress, the U.S. spent $416 billion for both public infrastructure and maintenance. They spend 57% of that budget on the maintenance and only 43% on the infrastructure. So there is a lot of money being spent on these issues, and it's, from my point of view, it could be like a waste of money and a waste of taxpayers' money. If we're gonna progress into a society that doesn't rely on highways or bridges or roads, if we're gonna start working from home more often or not depending to get on your car and go to a certain place to, let's say, get food or groceries, whatever, it's gonna be a waste of money. You're gonna have bridges and roads that people are not gonna be using that often. So, yeah, and his last claim is that, what is it? Yeah, that they are, almost 11% of the bridges are structurally deficient. I would argue that if a bridge is structurally deficient or it doesn't meet the needs of the people, it's the government's going to shut it down. And there's never been a case in recent history where a bridge collapsed in the middle of rush hour or anything. If a bridge doesn't work, it gets shut down. I'm gonna just cite really quick an annual report by Congress of 2014 for the National Transportation Safety Board that says that between 2000 and today, there's only been 16 bridges that have collapsed, and their collapse has nothing to do with the structure deficiency. It's mainly like natural causes or accidents, like natural causes and other factors. So yeah, like thank you.
And I like the argument you were making at the end, but it seemed like you kind of bailed out on it. I think you want to argue, in essence, that there isn't really anything to worry about on these bridges. That they are regularly inspected, that the ones that are dangerous are taken out of service, and that the ones that remain in service haven't presented any particular threat. The only collapses that we've had have been a result of accidents or natural causes, and it's not like the bridge suddenly collapsed under its own weight, and cars were just driving along and suddenly everything went kablooey. That's not really the source of any particular problem. I think that attempts to diminish any significance that the advocate's talking about. The earlier point, on your first point, where you're basically saying we've got this progressive society that's changing and there's going to be less and less need for that infrastructure. I like that argument. I thought that you did a pretty good job developing the notion that we're going to have less demand for that kind of infrastructure because of the way people work. I don't know that it would entirely disappear, but I think that most of the projections that are being made about how much roads that we need to have or how much spending we ought to be doing on those probably fails to take into account the way in which the economy is changing over time. And I thought that was an important point to make. The general press on the civil engineers, I thought that's a reasonable challenge to make. It sounds really political to do something like that. But I'm sure that there are commentaries on the report that they submitted, and I think if you could find some criticisms based on that, it would be a little bit easier to take that challenge and support it a bit. All right. Well, that's where we'll stop. Again.